Hey, folks, welcome here to another installment of Disgruntled. We are joined again with our good friend Johnny. Johnny, good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, not too bad. Not too bad at all. Let's get started. Pleasantries are over. You're doing good. I'm doing good. That's great. We are going to discuss this evening an article that I came across. I was perusing the internet as I always do to try to find things to talk about on this platform that have to do with the veteran community, but also things that we're not going to see and hear about in the mainstream media or anything like that. And so I came across this article. Uh, it was on the Military Times. It was posted yesterday or the day before, something like that, of this reporter just roasting Governor DeSantis of Florida for signing off on the I don't know what it's called, the death warrant. I heard it called, or read that it was called. Basically what's happening is there are individuals on death row. Quite a few of them in Florida, it appears, are veterans. And Governor DeSantis, who is also a Navy veteran, is signing off on these veterans being executed. The one that I can recall, the gentleman sat on death row for 43 years. He murdered his ex-girlfriend, her friend, and her two kids. And oddly enough, the most disturbing part is he killed one of the kids last. So this kid had to watch his parents and his little brother get murdered, shot in the head, like they were, prisoners of war. And then the gentleman turned the gun around on him and shot the last kid. So let me just ask you. I mean, we can dive into the particulars of the article and the story, but let me just ask you: if you are a veteran and you do a crime such as this, where you murder four people, two of them young kids under the age of 10, not that it matters, and you get put on death row, do you believe that there should be some kind of clemency or some kind of preferential treatment just because this one gentleman in particular was a veteran who also, let's just for clarity, had combat experience, who was in Vietnam, and apparently went through some pretty gruesome shit, like a lot of those guys did. Do you believe that he should have been shown leniency? And by leniency, I mean life in prison, so just continue living in prison after 43 years, or be put to death like he was originally sentenced. What's your take on this?
So, like we were kind of talking a little bit before the show, that there's so many facets to this, and I think I can make it really simple. My stance is that the service, you being a veteran, that one item by itself, no, that should not have any effect on anything. It's what was a result of that service. And there's a lot more details to get into. It's the other elements that exist that could be related to that service, but just the mere fact that you're a veteran, no, I don't
So
believe.
what do you mean by that? So just being a veteran is not enough, but are there things in your opinion that should be dictated by the nature of any person's service?
So what was a result of the service? If you were given that example of that guy who was, would you say 47 years or 43 years in prison?
He sat on death row for 43 years.
Okay. So the kid that was killed last, let's just say that kid watched his family die,
Mm-hmm.
and he was shot, but he survived.
Mm-hmm.
And he grew up, and as a result of that trauma, became a little crazy, had some PTSD, had a lot of issues it became kind of a loner, and whatever, all kinds of things could have happened. But later on in life became more of a violent person because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you could be a time traveler and you could see this kid grow up in a normal life and nothing like that ever happened, and he's totally fine and he's a great kid, great adult, contributing to society. This happens. You go back in time, this happens, and watch him grow up, and he becomes a very violent person. You could then, as that time traveler, say, this is the reason, this is the activating event that caused that person to become who that person was. So it's not the fact that his family was, or it's not the fact that he was a kid, or he was involved in Boy Scouts, or any other thing that could be brought up. The mere fact that you're a veteran, that's not the point. It's you got all this action, you got PTSD, you got anxiety, depression, all kinds of things that could have come with it, all this trauma that comes from it. And if you have actions that result from that, being a veteran wasn't the reason why you should be given preferential treatment. It's about your state of mind at the time. Now we've got laws. I'm sure most states have variations of their laws, or portions of their law that allow for deviations. You can kill somebody in the state, but depending on the state of mind you were in, you could get off scot-free eventually, not right away, but eventually with an insanity plea, if that was ever taken into account. Or you can have a murder charge or manslaughter charge downgraded because of the what was the term? The heat of passion. It can take a first degree murder or whatever it is. I should have researched maybe some of the laws beforehand, but I remember just from being in cop school 15 years ago that in the heat of passion, you walk in and it's an intentional killing. You walked in, you saw your wife and your best friend in bed, and you didn't know what was going on. So nothing was premeditated. You didn't have any idea that that your wife was cheating on you. And you go in there, you see it, and you black out almost. You get in this red zone and you go grab your gun and you kill them both. That is a lesser charge or a lesser punishment you're going to get as a result of that than you would if you knew that stuff was going on ahead of time. You went and grabbed your gun, planned it out a week in advance. It's a lesser charge. The result is the same. Those two people died, but
So
there's
it's
a
a
lesser
lesser
charge.
charge if it was not premeditated, is what you're saying?
Well, there's again, I'm forgetting the elements because it's been so long, but ultimately it can be downgraded because it was in the heat of passion. And I want to say it was between first, second, and third degree murder. I don't remember it applying to manslaughter, but maybe it did, because I thought manslaughter was more accidental. But first degree is premeditated, pre-planned, intent. And I want to say it gets downgraded to second degree if it was in the heat of passion. I'd have to look it up later.
Well, so here's the thing. Here's the thing that runs through my mind, right? Is no matter who you are and where you served, what branch you served in, what theater you may have served in, or anything like that, we all were taught all the same, depending on your branch of service, but all, for the most part, the same values. And even when you are in a forward area, maybe you find yourself in combat every day for multiple hours a day, which is true for some people. You still are instilled with those values from day one, from the day you first join, the day you first put on a uniform and start your training. And so I guess even after all the combat and the gruesome shit and all that stuff, you still have that foundation, I believe. And so even if this one individual that we were talking about has, and it says right here, this gentleman had documented combat service, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and many other war-related conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But even with all of that, I don't believe that you just lose sight of those values and things like innocent children. I don't know that I think that because you're a veteran, especially one with combat experience, that those values and those instincts and all of that stuff are probably a little stronger because now you know more about what it takes, and you know more about how the world works, and the gruesome shit that happens to people all over the world. And so I don't buy that because of these conditions that this dude was just uncontrollable rage that he killed children. I don't know, man. I have a really hard time putting two and two together. And of course, I've never been in a situation where I had blind rage and I held the gun to a child and then had to think, oh well, wait a minute, this is a kid. And so I can't say that I've ever walked in those shoes, thankfully enough, but I just don't know that you lose that value for life, especially in America where our elderly and our kids and our sick are the most important things to us, as it relates to who's in your circle.
Yeah, I don't think you lose it either. I think that everybody adapts over time, and you could be filled with hate for 20 years of horrible things that you've been exposed to, and maybe you start to generalize some of those feelings over time, and then you start to have a hatred for a certain group of people. Let's just say that cops are a great example. I have a huge amount of respect for law enforcement in this country, and all you have to do is the bare minimum to get my support.
Mhm.
But getting the bare minimum is hard to do because there's too much to know, too much to learn for a cop, and then there's too many expectations. So it's easy for a cop and a lot of pressure. So it's easy for cops to make mistakes. And when they do, they're going to wrong somebody. And that person that gets wronged, maybe they get wronged 50 times a year and they're just sick of it.
Yeah.
And so they might still have those values in their mind, but when they see that uniform, they just don't, they become more of a sociopath, and apathetic towards their humanity, and they don't see them anything. They don't see them as humans anymore. For example, if I'm kind of going to an extreme, but giving some example of how again, yes, I think the person's going to grow up still having those views, but things over time are going to change or make their brains adapt, to justifying eroding feelings towards certain classes of people. But I don't think that applies to. I, I I chose an extreme for a reason, so it could maybe be relatable a little bit to some people. But for the most part, you're not getting 50 to 100 contacts with a cop every single year, and feeling like you just can't escape anywhere, and push to the limits. You have a pretty well-rounded um, interaction with a vast, diverse group of people throughout your entire life. So I think that most people would maintain that. And the other side of that coin is, well, maybe that person never did have those values instilled. And I said sociopath earlier. That's a great example. They've been faking emotions since as far back as they can remember.
Yeah, there's some truth to that too. But then also, I mean, even from the time we're little children, I guess to me, it comes down to, do you know the difference between right and wrong?
Hmm.
And of course, it's a rhetorical question, right? Of course, the answer is yes. Just about every adult on the planet knows the difference between right and wrong. And when you spend 43 years, and apparently, according to the article, this one particular gentleman, the whole time he was on death row, maintained that he was innocent. Well, he had multiple court hearings, couple trials, all these things, and a jury of his peers on more than one occasion found him guilty of 4 counts of capital murder. And thank you for your service, but you can't go around killing. I mean, you can't just be a vigilante and then expect to get excused because you serve the country. I think that we as a community, as a veteran, a warrior culture, we should hold each other to higher standards. And and like you were saying before, Governor DeSantis is the end of the line. So where the hell was everybody else who were decision makers along the way, not just for this one gentleman, but it says here, veterans make up roughly 12% of Florida's death row inmates. And 40% of the death warrants that DeSantis signed in the last calendar year were veterans. Is that an alarming statistic? Yeah,
Not for me.
it's kind of
Not for me. It's not.
concerning that veterans make up that many people on death row. And maybe the system failed them somewhere after they got home and came out of the service, that these people are committing these crimes that put them in prison on death row. But I'm not surprised, because we do know that the system that's meant to support veterans isn't necessarily as strong as everyone thinks it is.
Yeah, agreed. Statistics are tough because when you're talking about how many were signed this year? Like 250 something?
He
Sound right?
signed this year, it was like 42 of them that were veterans.
Right, but total was like 250 something, wasn't it? I think it
I
was
believe
250,
so.
256 or something. In a state with 22.5 million people, you're talking about 1/100th of the population, 1/100,000th of the entire population, with all of them. How easy is it to, with a population that large, to take that 40% this year, 40% veterans this year, could be 5% next year, and 60% the year after that. I mean, there's so many things that can move that needle so easily. I mean, it's like trying to take your thermostat, which is only at, by degree, each degree, single whole degree, and saying, well, I don't want it at 70 degrees. I want it at 70.0001 degrees. That's impossible. There's too many variables at play, and this house is too large to figure that out, and our technology is not that great to figure out that good. But so when you're talking about 40% of the death warrants this year are veterans, yeah, that could. What if that? What if the majority of the people in that state are veterans, and compared to other states too? I mean, anything can. So I don't like statistics very much, especially when you're dealing with such a tiny, like 250 in a year. I don't like that. They're hard to justify, but that's the shock value of it is 40%. It's a huge percentage
Mhm.
of what? And then going back to the last line, or the last stop, before the train leaves the station again. It's DeSantis is the last guy. It's what if you're the argument can be made that the governor should step in if he sees some injustice is being created in the system. They've got the power to pardon, and they don't have to sign the death warrant and whatever. But going back and pointing fingers to other prongs there, what about the jury with jury nullification? What about the judge and prosecutors with certain discretions, and then going back all the way to the beginning, the lawmakers could change this for the future. Ultimately, the lawmakers are responsible for what ball is being served up, and then whoever hits the ball deals with the consequences of or range of consequences that exist. So it starts with the lawmakers. If DeSantis shouldn't, or any governor shouldn't have the power for certain people, then the lawmakers need to change that. Should there be an exception for veteran status? Well, then go back to the lawmakers and tell them to change the law. I don't agree with it being the excuse, because it falls on mental issues, if that's what we're talking about, not the fact that you're a veteran. But if you can't chastise DeSantis for signing something, the lawmakers are responsible for serving up the plate. Now everybody else is just eating chicken off the plate, and then it gets to DeSantis, and he's left with a chicken wing, and he's hungry. What is he supposed to do? And that's a weird analogy, but you know what I'm saying? Like, like it makes it to the end, and he's the last guy, so he's the scapegoat. He's got a job to do too, and if he sees veteran status as a reason to pardon somebody, now all these victims, they'll just be re-victimized or feel victims for the rest of their lives. Maybe they won't get any peace in their life for it, and why should they not get the justice that they feel like they deserve just because of the status there? So if that guy, if two guys went into a park and killed my kid, and it just happened to be the veteran because the the other guy tossed the gun to him. But if that guy kept the gun and killed my kid, I would have a different outcome, that I could live with. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
but you bring up a good point, because in the article there was a snippet about the father of this woman and how he went to every court date, he went to every hearing, he went to every single thing, including the execution, which was just I think it was like a month ago. Finally, it was this guy's turn, and they killed him by lethal injection. And you said something a few minutes ago about what if it was my kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think the important thing that people don't take into account is, what if it was your kid? What if it was my kid? How would I feel? Would I be fucking pissed if it came out that the government granted this guy leniency because he served the country, but I know that he murdered in cold blood. He murdered my daughter, and then my grandkids, and then some other dude that she was sleeping around with. That would not be okay with me. I wouldn't be okay with the dude that murdered my kids just getting life in prison. So now we got to spend, what is it, $60,000 to $80,000 a year per inmate to keep them alive, feed them, clothe them, clean them, all that
Gotta
shit,
be way
house
more.
them.
It's got to be way more than that now.
In my opinion, it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. Some people in some instances are just beyond reform. And if you're going to murder kids execution style, and then before you murder them, murder their parents, so they got to watch it. Their final second was looking at their mother dead with a gunshot wound to the head. And this guy should be granted leniency. If anything, he should be held to a higher standard because he did serve. I know a lot of veterans who have some pretty significant challenges: mental health, physical health, um, getting along in society, holding down a job, being good fathers to or mothers to their kids. Just all of those, just being good people. They really struggle with it. Is it because they served? Maybe, maybe not. But they're not out murdering people.
Right. There's a major financial burden on this country, and there always has been when it comes to. I mean, if I remember correctly, I don't think any country in the entire world houses more people in prison than America does.
Yeah.
And
Well, at least
and
gives them as good of a life as they got.
right, yes. So it might be 60 grand, could be 80 grand. It depends on probably on the severity of their crime and what level of prison they're in and all that jazz. And even I want to say 15, 20 years ago, I heard it was like $3 or $4 million to put somebody on death row because of all of the entitlements that those people get. So even getting them to that death row, we put a massive financial burden.
Yeah.
I'm, I think, I think killing in general is wrong. Obviously, there's war. There's self-defense. There's all kinds of stuff that come into play that can justify killing. And but I think in general terms, I think that killing is wrong, and it'd be great if it just never happened. But when it comes to prisons, like if we truly believe that these people are that bad, if we're going to have the death penalty, it should be a hell of a lot cheaper, like a fucking value menu at McDonald's. Because I think that we're ridiculous in that regard. Now, how does the victim? I want to know the victim impact um, uh, panel, the speech. You get your dad comes up and wants to give his statement because the guy killed me, and my dad's got to come up there and give his statement. And like, this was the worst thing ever until I realized you're a veteran, and now it's all good, man. I get it. No big
Yeah.
deal. Like,
Yeah.
is that how it's supposed to go? So
Well,
it's
no, it's not. I don't think.
right. So it goes back to then take the veteran status out of it, and it has to do with mental stuff. And if mental stuff can't be substantiated, then now you're talking about somebody who's trained, um, and at what level their training is, could be debatable depending on the person, but they're trained to a certain extent, and they should be held to a higher standard. And if they're not, and there is mental issues, well, then they should they should be treated like any other person who reaches that temporary or permanent level of insanity, and they should be treated differently. So the veteran status has nothing to do with it in my mind at all. I would say we could still give preferential treatment to veterans in certain ways, like maybe there's better resources out there while they're going through this process, but they should still be treated the same as everybody else in terms of their consequences. It's just maybe we give them more resources because of what the war or what their service might have done to them. um, I would make an argument. I would entertain a case for that. I don't know if I could make an argument myself. I'm just welcoming the idea of somebody to come up and say, like, here's a great example. If we're taking murder out of it and death warrants out of it, even though that's what this topic is about, when you get a DUI or certain other cases like that, you can have um, certain counties take part in programs that allow for veterans to be put into a veteran court, and then um, and it's not that they're treated differently. They're I think the I think the I think the counties and the people in general have decided that while they deserve consequences for their actions, maybe we know that servicemen and women have a lesser chance of recidivism, for example, because of their training and their years of service, and they've gone through boot camp and all this other stuff that have made them into a person who they can tolerate leadership or authority better, or they can right the ship quicker than the average citizen can. So let's put them into this program. We'll put them on probation, and we'll right the ship again. If it's easier for that, and then we'll dismiss the charges uh, because of the interest of the public. But not murder.
Well, but you bring up a good point because research has shown that veteran courts, which are a thing in multiple places, in multiple corners of our country nowadays, have proven to be extremely successful. And there are veterans who have been reformed. Now, the severity of your crime also depends on whether or not you qualify for veterans court. But there are some pretty serious crimes that will still allow you to veterans court, and really what it is much like you're saying, they realize that veterans they take leadership a little bit better because at one point in your life you were lower than whale shit, as my father-in-law would say. You were the scum of the earth, but you persevered. You found a way to get through it, and did what you had to do within the confines of what was allowed. And so what veteran court does is allows you a different path to paying your debt.
Hmm.
Sometimes it still involves um, jail time and incarceration, but the treatment and all those other things. I mean, you have to put in a lot of work to graduate from veterans court. It's not like they just go to a different courtroom that's labeled for veterans and they get slapped on the wrist and a little pat on the ass and don't do that shit again. God dang it! Now get out of here. It's not what it's like. It's a lot of work.
So those veterans are used to hitting limits far greater than the average citizen is. So that it stands to reason we can push these guys in greater limits than the normal person can in our court system, and they'll tolerate it. They'll figure it out. They'll right that ship, and the recidivism rate is a lot lower. And yeah, there you go. So it's worth it. I think it does. I think it is something that's good. But then getting back to obviously these death warrants and stuff. We've I don't know how many, I don't know what it's like in Minnesota, and if this is going to bleed, if this topic is going to bleed over into other states. This is
Hopefully it does.
I saw the article with DeSantis, and maybe it's going to happen with most of those states that have death sentences still. What was it, 50 years ago or so? The death penalty was reinstituted, but wasn't it outlawed in the whole country for a while?
It was for a while, yes. And there aren't not all states, excuse me, have it. Um, but I think here's the thing. I think that this story, this article in particular, it brings up a good discussion point but I think that the main point of it is kind of just cannon fodder, you know. I believe that there are much more pressing issues in the veteran community than whether or not men and women who served in the military who were found guilty for things like capital murder should be
Hmm.
given preferential treatment when it comes to the end when they're supposed to be executed. Why are we not reading more articles about what people are doing, what we are doing as a community of our own, what the government's doing, just the community in general is doing to address veteran homelessness and veteran suicide and joblessness, and keeping families together, veteran families together, financial literacy for veterans. How many dudes or gals from the military, Johnny, do you know that bought dumb shit because military paychecks, they're not huge, but you don't have a whole lot to pay for? Your food's paid for, your shelter's paid for. How many dudes do you know went out and bought like a Ford Raptor or some dumbass vehicle or whatever and just wasted their money every month and then found themselves in some pretty strenuous financial situations? I
Right.
can tell you that I was one of them. And I learned the hard way.
Yeah, there's that it's not just after you come home from Iraq too, because once you get hit or whatever, any country, any war, any deployment, or active duty in the state, um, um, when you get out into the real world, I think once people realize how many bills they have to pay, maybe they figure it out. But even while we were overseas, in Iraq and Kuwait, the amount of money that people spent on shit was just appalling. Like
It was ridiculous, dude.
I don't know if you remember. So I was probably one of only a handful of people that really didn't get basic housing allowance. Because most people figured out a way to get it. So I was probably the cheapest person in the company, and maybe among the battalion itself. But I got up. I'm going to say morning, but we didn't wake up in the morning. I got up every morning, our morning, um, and I went to the chow hall every time I could, every chance I could, and I worked out, and we went on our missions, and I cleaned my weapons, and some of my free time was spent playing video games with some other guys if we had systems available. Otherwise, that's all I did. Free food, free gym, and that was most of my time. Or I'd get, you spend $10 and you've got 11 seasons of Seinfeld, so you can you
Yeah.
can go watch you can go watch that. And that was and then I think the most I ever spent my money on was $5 for a giant ass, like authentic Italian gooey nasty. I mean, it was amazing. It was the best pizza I ever had in my life. But this Italian shop that was on post,
Yeah, dude, that
it
pizza
was
was so
five
good.
bucks. I would eat the whole thing. It was it was huge. It had to have been like a 14-inch pizza. And but that was one of the few things I spent my money on, and it was like once every week or once every couple of weeks or something like that. But then everybody else is buying sheets. They're buying that, like, none of them go to the chow hall. I'm willing to bet there are people who have never gone to a chow hall, and that's all they did was buy food, order food, get food sent to them. They bought all these video games. They bought all kinds of stuff online. Um,
Dude,
I don't
when
know.
we came home from our second deployment in Kuwait, at the time when we left, I was living in my mother's basement because I just got divorced. And I
Yeah.
came home from that second deployment and I went down into the room that I had my stuff in, and it was just full of boxes and shit that I had bought while we were deployed. Dude, I bought a pair of $450 rollerblades and wore them once, but I thought they were the coolest thing. Hey, and we're getting paid, you know? So, but those are the things, man. I don't know that as a community, we should be spending a whole lot of time on this type of issue when there's so many other issues in our community that should be taking attention. And here I say that while we're spending now 35 minutes talking about this topic. But I don't know that this is something that maybe it's a good thing that this particular story wasn't on the mainstream media, because it's kind of a head scratcher, and it seems to me like it's a and I don't want to get political, but it seems like it's almost an article written by some left-wing media person to attack the other side. Well, look at Ron DeSantis as a Navy veteran. He's signing death warrants for other veterans. Yeah, dudes that were murdering kids. What? Why is this? Why would anybody just even balk at it? They also say that there's all these other veteran organizations and nonprofits that are picketing to stop this executing veterans because they served this country. I just don't know that I agree with that.
No, no, I don't either. And I just, I think it's all about mental stuff for the most part. I mean, if you, if you get, if you get those veterans who, don't have mental, problems and they go out and kill somebody, it should be treated no differently. And then they have mental stuff, then it should be treated like they need some treatment and whatever. Then you make the insanity plea, and then it goes back to the lawmakers on finding exceptions. But again, it has nothing to do with the veterans.
Let me ask you this, and I don't know enough about this actual case to like talk super intelligently about it, but what I do know is that people like Lee Harvey Oswald, for example, he was a military veteran.
Hmm.
He did a lot of shit in the intel community. And so there's all kinds of theories about what was really going on there. But had he not been killed, would he have got preferential treatment because he was a veteran? He allegedly shot the president, killed the president, assassinated a president.
Absolutely.
Is he going to not have a chance at a lenient sentence and just do, well, because you served, you can just do life in prison for killing the president of the United States? Or would he have been sent to the electric chair? I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know, man. I don't know that. And yeah, JFK was our president, and it was a tragedy that he was murdered that way. But his is not any more serious or more gut wrenching because he was the president. In my opinion, it's a bigger tragedy that this dude executed children.
right.
So I don't know. I
I
don't
was
know.
trying
I
to look
think
up. I was trying to look up death penalties by state. I didn't find it right away, but there's California's looking pretty high up there too. Maybe we should talk about him now too.
Gavin Newsom.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
Gavin
dude's
Newsom.
a turd.
Did you say he's a turd?
Yeah, he's a major turd. Okay, so here's the state. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 states that do not have the death penalty, if I'm reading this correctly.
Well, and that's so I counted that too, and that's specifically for veterans.
Yeah, but
Veterans.
those are ones that have the death penalty.
So
Because
I just
every
googled that. I
every
just
state
googled.
has veterans in prison for murder.
I think when I looked it up, I want to say it was like 23 states have outlawed it.
Well, shit.
I know, so that was confusing to me too. I saw that and I was like, oh, maybe it is. Maybe it is a lot more common. I don't know. Holy crap. As of 2025, the following states of the United States have the death penalty. Texas had 574 executions, but I mean, that's Texas.
Well, let me ask you this. I know you said earlier you don't believe in killing, but how do you feel about the death penalty in general?
I think that, um, and this is probably going to be unpopular, but I'm trying to think about, you know, taxpayers as a whole. I'm trying to think about victims, and I'm trying to think about our crowded jails and everything else. I think that if it is beyond a reasonable doubt, you're found guilty. I know that there are innocent people who get sentenced to jail all the time. I don't know what the percentage is. It could be 1%. It could be less, a half a
It,
percent. I have
it
no idea
definitely
what it is.
happens.
It definitely happens though. That's 100%. And I feel for those people and their families. You're supposed to trust your justice system, but there's way too many flaws, and I don't know of a better way to fix it. But what I will say is, for how I don't even think that we need to have the death penalty for people who as a capital punishment based off of murder. If you're going to be a guy who's life in prison, like where's the quality of life there anyway? And all we're doing is we're paying somebody's. Oh, what's the median income in this country right now per person? Like 30 to 50 grand? I don't even know what it is. It's probably
Yeah,
pretty
I'd
damn
say
low.
that's pretty accurate, 30 to
And we're
50.
and we're paying on average, we'll call it for sake of argument, $65,000 a year for this fuck to stand and to sit in jail, to get raped by his buddies, sex when you don't want it. Still probably it's probably pretty good still. I don't know. Who knows? I'm sure they like it. But you're taking up that much space, that much energy and time from other people. You could be beat up all the time in jail. You could be the one beaten up in jail. It's a rotten mess based off of race when you get in there too. And it's just
Yeah.
all we're doing is creating. There might be a ton of people who reform and they become amazing people. They know they're never getting out of jail, but maybe while they're in jail, they become wonderful human beings. I don't know, but we're still paying for them to sit there when an entire household can live off of that that amount of money. I know it sounds really harsh, but I don't want to pay for that shit.
Me neither.
Um, and so maybe it's not the death penalty, but I would say anybody who is supposed to get a death sentence, I don't think that we should be spending millions and millions of dollars over the course of decades with their defenses and keeping them alive and ultimately in the end just to fucking kill them anyway. That sounds like a pretty piss poor investment. And if you got somebody who is worth the investment, well, instead of spending 65 grand on them every single year, let's spend 50 grand and make sure that they're contributing to the society and getting a job and everything else, and maybe starting a family. Maybe there's more efficient ways we can do that if there are people who deserve that chance. And then if you take advantage of that chance and you don't do a good job, um, then and you go back to prison. I don't know how many times. I don't have rules for this in my head, but the more money that you're costing the government because you're in prison, fuck it, get rid of them. And if it's not the death penalty, then put them in a goddamn cage. Like, you ever seen Prison Break?
Yeah.
I binge watched that first season for sure. It started getting boring after that for me, but one of the
We
Prison
watched it
Break,
in Iraq.
fuck yeah! But one of the Prison Break seasons was in that. I don't even know what was it? Guantanamo, Panama? I don't fucking know. It was some place out in the I want to say it was South America somewhere, but they kind of fended for themselves. And I'm like, perfect, do that. Like
Yeah.
we'll spend 100 grand a year manning this thing for 800 people in there to just fend for themselves. And good luck, guys.
Yep.
Um,
Plant some food, put in some farm animals and let them do the rest. That
that's
would
like that's like the Kurt Russell show movie. Had a whole series. He had several of these movies.
the Escape from New York movies.
Yes. Yes. And it was a
Yeah.
different escape from a different place, or
Escape
whatever,
from
different
LA.
city every. Yeah. Do that.
Well, yeah, dude. I don't I had I had a point in my head and it's escaped me now. God dang it. It
Well,
was
we
a
do a
good
good
one
job.
too.
We get down rabbit holes. You got to write that shit down because once Johnny starts talking,
Well, it's okay. Like it's all good. It's very good discussion. But I think that people tend to, for whatever reason, they have this soft spot for these types of stories, and I don't understand it. I don't get it. Um, I don't know that. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. What happens to people in other countries in this world when they do screwed up stuff? What about those countries in Africa where if you steal a pomegranate from a market, they cut your fingers off? Then they send you home. If you sexually assault somebody, they're going to cut your dick off and send you home. You deal with it. But guess what? You're not going to steal any more fruit because you don't have any fingers left. And all the people around you that watch you get your fingers cut off or your dick chopped off, they're going to think about it too when they want to steal or they want to do something stupid. And like making an example out of the people that have proven and shown that they cannot just abide by the law even just if you're going to drive drunk and whatever, man, it's stupid. I don't condone it. I think it's dumb. You don't deserve to die for it, but also nobody else deserves to die because of your stupid decisions. And so
Right.
you have to pay the price for that. If you take a life in a brutal way, like such as this guy we were talking about, um, in my opinion, he probably got off easy by getting a shot and going to sleep and never waking up. Why did this guy not have to feel anything similar than what he caused? Because these people, Johnny, they don't understand. They don't understand a soft, gentle way to deal with problems. They're in this position because they took matters into their own hands and they did brutal shit to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, why not let them know what it feels like? Let
I
them
do
know,
believe
just like we learned when we were kids, there's always somebody bigger and badder that's going to whoop your ass.
I do believe I think that there's some merit to an eye for an eye though too. If you've got like if I'm gonna punch somebody in the face, I deserve to get punched in the face. If I'm gonna kill somebody, I deserve to die for it. Now I know that there's like we talked about, there's self-defense and war and all this other stuff, but we're talking about intent at this point. If you intended on stealing something from somebody, you should pay for that. And how you pay for it is we've got laws in place and you got to follow these procedures and there's an exorbitant amount of money spent on defense and prosecution and all this other shit. And I think it's a lot easier as you climb the ladder of crime severity that having an eye for an eye can start to make more sense. At least it makes sense to me. If I burn somebody's house down, I should have everything taken away from me and they should get all my property. If I kill somebody because I just didn't like the way they looked at me, I deserve to lose my life. I mean, and maybe that would help out too. It'd be kind of a compromise to what you're talking about in these other third world countries. That guy stole a fucking melon, he lost his fingers. That's probably pretty severe.
Extreme,
Um,
yeah.
it's extreme, but it I'm sure it works for them. Well, kind of a compromise to that is finding a way to make it more of an eye for an eye. And I guess maybe your talk I guess I'd be referring more to what do you call it? It starts with an R. Restitution. Restitution. So if financially you've created a victim, then you pay restitution with interest. And if you hurt somebody, your restitution that you owe is you getting hurt. Maybe there's something. Maybe that's more of a compromise and not as severe and not cruel and unusual. Hmm. But then I also, on a not to get down a rabbit hole on this because I think we should talk about laws in this country, but I do believe that there are far more laws in this country than should exist. I think that you truly should have a victim in order to have a crime, but 99% of the crimes out there, the government's the victim. Um, and I don't, not a huge fan of that. I think that's a pretty big bullshit. And
Disagree.
that's a big reason as to why our penal system is so crowded and people have a lot less patience and judges and prosecutors are making plea agreements. Well, I didn't do this. Well, it doesn't matter. Here's a plea agreement. You can fight it and lose and get 10 years, or you can take this plea agreement and get 2 years. Well, what's the point? I mean, I didn't do it though. Well, I mean, that's just this justice system is just fucked. And I don't know of a better way to handle it, but got some ideas. We'll start our
Well,
own country.
oh boy. Oh boy. We're going to have some intense conversation about what the qualifications are. Well, I think, bro, that I think that we beat this one up. I think that we got a pretty good discussion in. Uh, I just I want calm down because I get really wrapped around the axle about this shit, man, because it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me why these types of things become big deals, and there's so many other things that our media could be covering. important things. And again, this coming from a show who's talking about this. But I think it's good to have at least an initial discussion to like weigh out, you know, what's right, what's wrong, what might be acceptable. I just my final thought on this whole topic is leave Governor DeSantis alone. He's doing the right thing. These people that were sentenced to death by a jury of their peers, some of them more than once. Let's talk about other things that are probably a little more impactful to our community.
Yep.
Johnny,
Talk about other things. And if you're going to decide to go after people, you know, DeSantis is the end of the line. Don't go after him. Go after everybody else before him too. He's
yeah,
just
that's
the
a good
last.
point. What happened? What happened for 43 years? That now all of a sudden the governor needs to say no, 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 no. This guy's a veteran. We can't execute him. What was going on for 43 years leading up to that day? So I agree with you 1,000%. All right, Johnny. Final thoughts. You got anything to say before we close?
I think we said it all, man.
Okay. Folks, we want to thank you for joining us. Johnny, thank you for your time. Again, if you enjoyed this content or this discussion, leave some comments below. Tell us what you think. I think that one thing that would be awesome is if we get good, meaningful comments, we can then discuss those comments on the show. So leave us what you think. Let us know what you think. You know, chime in on this stuff. Again, drop us a like, subscribe, follow, whatever you're share us, please. And so all of that stuff all wrapped into one to say thank you for watching. Johnny, thanks for your time, and we'll see you guys all again next week. Good night.